Hey guys, this is another video which as always I hope to be as entertaining as I've been these past few videos. I apologise if I'm a little bit dark, it's just I'm trying to get the lighting right on this on each and every video. Now today I don't intend it being as energetic as I usually am, because this is getting my reviewing head on something that I've been holding back on doing for a number of reasons. Today I will be looking at each episode of Game of Thrones, starting with obviously season 1 episode 1, Winter is Coming. Now before I go down this road, there's a couple of suggestions and advice. I will be discussing in depth each episode in order, obviously, like I previously stated with the first episode. So I strongly advise anyone, if you're either rewatching Game of Thrones or watching Game of Thrones for the first time maybe, as I know people have expressed a desire to watch Game of Thrones for the first time who might not have never seen it. And so basically the original plan was, the first episode just going all in spoilers, but I'm aware that people have expressed a desire to watch an episode and watch one of these reviews straight after. And that is my advice to anyone, to any potential viewer out there. If you want to watch sit and listen to me discuss each episode in depth, my advice to you is watch that said episode before coming to this video. Obviously there is going to be spoilers as I discuss each and every episode. Also, I would like to request anyone that it might be equally as passionate in Game of Thrones as me to try not to put any spoilers down on the comment section, because people could be watching this for the first time and I would hate if anything got ruined for them. Now, as you can see, these are the notes. I've literally just watched the first episode of Game of Thrones, and these are the notes I've got. This is, bearing in mind, just the first episode. Yeah, you get the pictures. A lot of notes in. So even though I could, I'd rather not just sit here because it would take me roughly about an hour to go through these notes and discuss why I've written each note and why I think it's vital to each plot point. So basically, I've just quickly written these notes, and I will pick and choose which I feel is the most vital plot point in each episode and discuss it briefly or in depth, depending on how much time I have. I will try to be as brief as humanly possible, but basically, using this approach to the videos I will be making, obviously there is going to be quite a bit that I'll probably be aware of, but still be forced to miss out if I don't want these videos to be long. So previously to what I just recently suggested, this is why I would recommend watching the episodes first before coming into here. So hang on. So if you've just watched this video and have the intention to watch Game of Thrones, pause this video, watch Game of Thrones, and come back. It's alright, I'll wait. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Pause the video. You done? Okay, now we're back. Now, as people might notice, all the way back onto me Doctor Who stuff, I am highly critical on a lot of Doctor Who episodes, on a lot of other television series that I may or may not be highly critical of. Game of Thrones is not one of them. Now, this isn't me stating that Game of Thrones is perfect, is a work of perfection. This is just basically me stating that, speaking as an appointed amateur writer, I don't feel qualified to critique anything Game of Thrones or the books Ice and Fire is. That simply for the reason being that I feel that I could, again, speaking as an amateur writer, I could sit in a room, hypothetically, for 100 years and still not come up with something as ingenious or as intriguing or as complex as Game of Thrones. It's just beyond my capabilities. So therefore, as a human being, I don't feel qualified to critique anything of the Game of Thrones directions, plot lines, characterization, and so on and so forth. So to be honest with you, you're going to see a completely different approach from me. So let's get down to the brass tacks. let's talk shop and get down to the episode. Already in the opening sequence, which is absolutely phenomenal, I might add, of Game of Thrones. You would have to... I cannot just sit here and describe it. But already, I feel... I remember the first time I watched Game of Thrones, and that being said, I knew... I didn't know what, and I know this sounds quite cliched, maybe, but I knew that I was about to sit and about to experience, rather than watch, experience something very enjoyable. I feel that Game of Thrones is like so many shows of today, that it relies on string continuity. For those who aren't aware of that terminology, string continuity is just something that simply relies on the story of last episode continues that story without having its own individual plot, such as television has been doing for a considerate number of time. So now I've got all that out of the way, let's talk about the episode in hand. With this being the first episode of Game of Thrones, I genuinely feel it does a great job in establishing the characterization, the plot point, and basically, I had a map somewhere which I genuinely do apologise for, because there is characters in the episode that are doing things in different parts of the established world. So I did have a map, and I'm going to show you which character currently is in that said episode and why they're currently doing what they're doing, but I thought I haven't found my map yet, so I do genuinely apologise. However, that being said, in the introduction, in the opening scene, you already see the Night's Watch in the wall, and basically, for those who don't know, the wall is guarding everybody else, or pretty much that's the idea of the wall. They are protecting up this huge land underneath it. So essentially, all the other plots you see in that episode is happening, I don't want to say beneath, but happening behind the wall. And you see the Night's Watch in its very first scene, I might add, before the opening introduction. So basically, all the other plot points, all the other characters are behind that said wall. The Night's Watch are the only characters that actually go past that wall and explore what's going on in, I want to say no man's land, but in the cold scenery. Sorry, my vocabulary's gone right out of the window. And already you get a feel of how fearful the Night's Watch are, how paranoid these people, these particular members of the Night's Watch are, and already you see what is called White Walker activity. So it's already giving you a theme that there's a certain threat approaching. Also, I would like to mention, then to be honest with you, you see the introduction of the Starks, and who are they as a family? Well, pretty much where Winterfell is, where the Starks currently live, I worked it out, it's less than 100 miles away from the wall. And although that sounds pretty far, in comparison, it's like the equivalent of just being around the corner, to be brutally honest with you. I think they call it 100 leagues. So actually it's less than 100 miles away. And then you see the characters of the Starks, and you see the introduction of Ned Stark as he beheads one of the Night's Watch for deserting. And already I feel as a viewer, I can't even get my words out, you are already questioning, is he in the right from someone who just ran away, who was just scared? So already you're questioning your own morality, because obviously Ned Stark, in his mind, you can clearly see he doesn't feel he's in the wrong. So this isn't a vindictive act when he decides to behead the deserter. I'm trying to be as brief as I can. I do apologise if I'm doing like this, but then you see King's Landing, and you see the establishment of King's Landing. Now, for those who are unaware, for the people watching at home, and this is the first time they've watched Game of Thrones, the idea of King's Landing is that said king controls the entire realm. So for those who don't know, I know it sounds like I'm just waffling, bear with me, because you might need this information to understand more what's going on. So basically, from a place called Dorne, which is actually south, is actually more southern from where King's Landing. So you've got Dorne all the way to the Wall. That is the said king's domain. So basically, all the characters you've just seen is under the king's rule. And then you see the establishment of the Lannisters, and already you get an impression of how much power and how much sway the Lannisters have over the throne, even though they are not, technically, they are not royalty themselves. You already get a feel of how much say they have in the throne room, in the court, for lack of a better terminology. And what I wanted to bring up as well is the introduction of King Robert. To me personally, I think Robert is a fascinating character because, and I don't, again, this is no spoilers because they already explore this in that set in the episode in hand in question. King Robert is basically the epitome of a human being who, again, who has done everything he needs to do. Now he's at the proverbial top of that mountain. But what happens when you have beaten everybody that needs to beat you? You feel you have done everything you need to do. And everything else, accepting responsibility, just might seem like secondary to the struggle. What I'm basically trying to describe here is he's a defined example, is Robert, that sometimes it's just the journey instead of the destination, if that makes sense. And because already they talk about it sometimes behind his back, particularly Ned Stark, and he's already, you know, they call it pillow talk with his wife, Catelyn Stark, and already they're discussing, how did Robert get so fat? Well, the answer to that question, during Robert's rebellion, for those who don't know, Robert wasn't always king. He fought a rebellion, overthrew the then present king, and became king himself. And at the time, you get the impression that when Robert took the throne, it was 15 years prior to the events of the first episode. Robert was considered a very handsome, very attractive young man, and as time has gone on throughout his duration as king, he has put weight on. He has lived a life of excess because he feels at that time, from his perspective, he's got nothing better to do rather than just eat, drink, shit, and sleep with women. I don't want to use whores, that's quite a derogatory term, but that's essentially what they say. Because in his mindset, what else is there to do? He doesn't take full responsibility as king, and I don't feel that's a spoiler because even though shall we say they explore it more throughout the series, I think it explores it. It makes it quite established in this particular episode. Also, I wanted to reference as well, wanted to bring up rather, that the episode did establish, even though bizarrely enough it felt like a bit of a B-plot, is the establishment of the Targaryens. I speak of Daenerys Targaryen, I think it's Viserys, her brother. I'm terrible at remembering her brother's name, but basically who they are, they was the Targaryens. I think it works out as their father was the king that Robert Baratheon overthrew. In fact, I know, to be honest with you, as pretentious as that sounds. And basically where the Targaryens are, they're in a place called Pentos, and they are based, so again, bearing in mind, I'll have to get my map out, I do apologise, where the Wall is, where King's Landing is, where Winterfell has already been established at this point. They're east from where they are. They're in a completely different continent, but bizarrely enough, not that far away. And already you see him attempting, Viserys attempts to make an alliance with Khal Drogo by marrying his own sister off, because he's severely under the impression that he will get an army by marrying him away. And please feel free to disagree with me as I mention this, one distinctive characteristic trait that I see in Viserys is desperation. But what has always struck me as a viewer with confusion is why, even though he does this deal with Khal Drogo. Sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Even though he marries his own sister off to get this army, and make no mistake about it. Khal Drogo, I think it mentions he has. Bear with me. Sorry, bear with me. I did write down how many men he had. I think it worked out to be about 40,000, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So this is obviously, wherever they are, this in the local area, he's obviously a powerful person. He's a tribesman. They come and go. But Viserys feels he can use this to disadvantage. But getting sidetracked, what was made quite obvious is that this is a desperate man who's willing to make an alliance with anybody just to get what he achieves. So basically, he's willing to shake his hands with the devil to try and rule heaven, if that makes sense. And it is quite abundantly clear that he reeks of desperation, even though he doesn't really value his sister very highly. It is quite obvious that he's willing to do anything to get what he perceives as his past former glory, even though, because he feels he has the right to the throne, even though he never actually sat on the throne. He has I think he has vague memories, but Daenerys has no memory whatsoever of Westeros overall. He still feels it's his right to claim a throne. But what's bizarrely striking is that it's so abundantly obvious that Viserys is willing, because he lives a life of comfort. I mean, these people are willing to host them. I forgot his name. Illyrio is the main proprietor of where they just happen to be staying. And he's so keen to try and get that better life. And already I know, but I feel to any potential viewer out there, it is quite oblivious that it may be too much of a great risk. And sorry about this. Here we go. I've just found the note. It was 40,000 people, Dothraki people. The mention of winter is coming. Now, for those who are again quite new to my channel, and quite new to Game of Thrones, basically keep a watch out for sigils, family sigils and mottos. That is increasingly important. You see it is increasingly important throughout the entire series, how much these people cling on to their family sigils and how much their motto, their words are. Basically, they compare their families to a variety of animals. For instance, the Stark sees themselves as the direwolf in the scene where the Starks come across a direwolf at I think they said usually there's no direwolves at all, usually on that side of the wall, and how important it was to them because the direwolf represents them. That is the sigil of their house. Their entire culture is based on how other people perceive them as animals, as bizarre as that sounds. And people perceive the Starks as the direwolf, and obviously their words are "winter is coming." Now, for people that have already watched Game of Thrones and just happens to be watching my videos, we all know already the significance of that. But watching for the first time, to be honest with you, you genuinely probably don't have a clue. All I'm going to say is keep watching. Jon Snow. It's obvious that Jon Snow isn't even though Ned Stark is his father. It is quite obvious that he was born out of wedlock. He's not a Stark, but he was brought up in Winterfell. So even though everyone else considers him a member of the family, noticeably Catelyn doesn't. Watch that episode again, watch that scene, the glare she gives him and makes him feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. Bearing in mind, he's been in Winterfell all his life. So I just keep an eye out for Jon Snow, and it's quite obvious that his life is destined to join the Night's Watch. He feels, rather, his life is destined to join the Night's Watch. Also, again, the only thing I can mention is the establishment of these characters, which I genuinely enjoyed the establishment of Tyrion Lannister, and how much it, even in this first episode, it establishes the prejudice that Tyrion Lannister has to go through, even though he is from a well-respected family as the Lannisters. And I think, to be honest with you, those are the main plots that I wanted to bring up. Other than that, it's thank you for watching. So yeah, that was my main introduction. Also, I wanted to bring up as well is the horrible cliffhanger and how the episode explores how socially unacceptable incest is. With the Lannisters twins fucking, that's quite excuse my French, twins having sexual relationships. That's quite that at the time when it first got heard, that was quite a bizarre concept. Now, I feel I have to very quickly bring this up. I don't know, you've probably already guessed already by watching me, I am really nervous, more than usual, because to be quite frank, Game of Thrones, in this day and age, today, speaking strictly in today's climate, is such a huge franchise, and I am genuinely intimidated to talk about it, because there are very knowledgeable people out there, more knowledgeable than me, that if I'm frightened to death of saying the wrong thing or getting a part of this well-established world or any of its reference of its history wrong, people will be down at me like a ton of bricks. So please bear with me. I am trying my best, and hopefully next time I do a Game of Thrones episode, I'll show you my map and obviously discuss what each character is. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative as always. Take it easy, guys. Dancing Bear out.